All right, so today we are diving headfirst into the surprisingly deep world of internet memes. We're going to see how they can actually unpack some really complex philosophical ideas, specifically from a thinker you've probably heard of, Slavoj Žižek. We're going to do it by looking at two very specific, very funny examples. It's a real question, right? Can a meme actually be a philosophy lesson? I mean, we usually just see them as these quick, disposable jokes, but what if they can be more than that? What if they can carry some pretty heavy critical thought? Let's see if a simple picture with some text on it can teach us something real about how we think. Okay, so our first case study actually features the man himself, the Slovenian philosopher. We're going to break down how this one image gets at a core concept in his work, this idea of a productive contradiction. Okay, here it is. You see Žižek, he's got this super intense, thoughtful look on his face, right? The furrowed brow, like he is wrestling with some huge idea. And the text, it lays out this super specific therapy scenario. And what's so cool here is that what it means really depends on how you look at it. So on one level, you could read this as pure sarcasm. That face looks kind of embarrassed, and that little thanks to you at the end feels like you're kind of sheepishly admitting, yeah, I figured this out on my own. No thanks to you, doc. But there's another layer here, a more psychoanalytic reading. It's this playful, almost arrogant self-awareness. It's like you're acknowledging that you did the real work. The therapist was just, I don't know, a prop you had to overcome. And this gets us to the heart of it, this idea of a productive contradiction. For a thinker like Žižek, finding a contradiction in your own logic isn't a mistake. It's not a bug that needs to be patched. No, it's a fundamental feature of how we work as human beings. And actually seeing that contradiction, that's the real first step towards any kind of meaningful change. It's basically the engine for growth. And this meme just perfectly illustrates why that matters so much. Žižek argues that ideology, the invisible rules that kind of run our lives, it works by hiding these contradictions. It smooths everything over to keep things running as they are. So your goal shouldn't be to become perfectly consistent, perfectly logical. The real goal is just to recognize your own messiness. And that's what's so brilliant here. The breakthrough didn't come from some all-knowing expert. It came from the messy process of just talking your own confused thoughts out loud. Okay, let's look at the next one. So our second meme, it gets into a totally different side of Žižek's philosophy. This one is way more confrontational. It's all about using your big brain as a kind of shield. Now look at this. The tables have completely turned. The patient is on the attack. And the humor is just, it's perfect. The patient is the one doing the analyzing. And you gotta pay attention to those quotation marks, the little quotes around ideological cope and truth. They're doing so much work here, just layering on the irony. This one little sentence is just packed with some heavy philosophical ideas. First, you've got the ideology critique, that classic Žižekian move of saying that even our most personal feelings are shaped by the society around us. Then there's the truth of anxiety. He actually claims that anxiety is the only emotion that doesn't lie to us. And finally, you've got this critique of therapy itself, this resistance to the idea that you should just learn to cope instead of actually tackling the root cause of your problems. But this whole thing leads us to this really fascinating paradox. I mean, what happens when your own brilliant analysis becomes the very thing that's actually holding you back? And that is exactly what's going on. By flipping the script and critiquing the therapy session itself, doing a meta-analysis, the patient finds this incredibly smart, really sophisticated way to not talk about their actual painful feelings. It's a defense mechanism, and a brilliant one at that. This is a textbook case of what you might call analysis paralysis. The person is so busy deconstructing the therapy that they can't engage with it. Their own intelligence, this ability to think about things on such a complex level, has become the biggest obstacle. They've basically thought themselves into a stalemate. So what's the ultimate irony here? It's that in this very attempt to be smarter than the system, to call out the therapist's ideological framing, the patient perfectly demonstrates one of ideology's key functions, our deep, powerful resistance to actually changing. They end up proving the very point they think they're so cleverly escaping. So what does all this mean? What are we supposed to take away from these two little philosophical jokes? Let's try and bring it all together and see the bigger picture. When you put them side by side, it becomes really clear. The first meme shows us how self-analysis, finding those contradictions in yourself, can be the key to a real breakthrough. But the second meme, it shows us the dark side. It shows how that same intellectual firepower can become a defensive wall that stops you from making any progress at all. They're really just two sides of the very same coin. And this really gets to the core of it all. Our ability to think critically about ourselves, it's a total double-edged sword. It can be the tool that helps us see the invisible structures that shape our lives and sets us free. Or it can become the sophisticated trap we build for ourselves to hide from truths that make us uncomfortable. So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. In your own life, how do you use your own thinking? When does it actually light up the path forward for you? And when does it become a really convenient excuse to just stand still? It's a messy, contradictory question. And as we've just learned, that's probably where all the most interesting answers are hiding.